Ken is a character in the Street Fighter series, and as Ryu's friend, his goal is to test his strength against various different fighters and strive to become the strongest. However, he exercises more self-discipline due to not wanting to endanger his family's life. When Ken was 12 years old, his father, a wealthy hotel owner, believed his son needed to learn more discipline, or he would become a spoiled troublemaker for the rest of his life and squander his family's wealth. To achieve this, he sent Ken to Japan to train under the supervision of his best friend, the mysterious Master Guken. Initially, Ken was very reluctant to learn from Guken, wanting to return to the United States. However, he later began to respect his master. He even enjoyed the company of Guken's adopted son, Ryu, playing pranks on Ryu despite often getting into trouble for it. Eventually, Ryu and Ken became best friends and main rivals. When Ryu turned 23, Guken decided that both of his students had grown enough to become free fighters. He concluded that their training was over, and they could now leave the dojo. Ryu chose to travel the world to continue his training, while Ken was content to return to the United States after years of stress, finally learning the meaning of humility. After returning home, Ken competed in various martial arts tournaments held in the United States, winning most of them. He did not participate in the first World Warrior tournament. Instead, he fought and won in the United States Martial Arts Tournament, previously won by Nash. Additionally, he met a very attractive girl named Eliza, who later became his girlfriend. After winning the American Self-Defense Martial Arts Tournament, Ken returned to the training ground to share the good news with his master Guken. There, he witnessed his master's death at the hands of Akuma. Filled with anger and sorrow, he attacked Akuma but was thrown to the ground with a single blow. Ken began wandering the world in search of Akuma, his friend and fellow student Ryu, wanting to inform Ryu of what happened to their master, and also hoping to win a match against him. He eventually finds Ryu in isolation. Ryu is surprised to see his friend, whom he hasn't seen in a long time, and they spar. Ken loses the fight, realizing the intensity of Ryu's nerves and anxiety since his battle with Sagat. Ryu explains to Ken that there is extreme anger inside him, a force trying to overcome him. Ken gives Ryu a red headband and tells him to stay focused. Ken returns home, and with the support of Eliza, begins even more challenging training, knowing internally that Ryu is always stronger than he appears. Ken begins to question his personal life and Ryu, wondering if he is on the right path again. Along the way, he encounters Karen, who tells him that she has been following his fighting career and is trying to surpass her rival Sakura to prove her superiority. Ken advises her that it's good to have a rival, not for the sake of superiority, but to continue training and be more focused. He goes to meet Sakura, they have a friendly match, and finally, Ken realizes that Ryu has been on the right path all along. He and Sakura start traveling to find Ryu, but their journey intersects with Bison. Ken confronts him, but Bison easily defeats him and puts him under mind control, then brainwashes him to lure Ryu out. Ryu appears, making Bison and Ken fight him. Ryu wins and learns that Ken's mind has been manipulated. Ryu proceeds to fight Bison but loses, and like Ken before him, he is mind-controlled. Sagat appears and, angered by Bison's actions, Ken and Sakura join forces with Sagat to try to break Bison's mental grip on him. They attack Bison, and this intervention makes Ryu return to his senses. Bison senses Ryu's mental strength but tries to control him, only for Ryu to defeat him. Ken receives an invitation to the Second World Warrior Tournament. Since the last tournament in the United States Martial Arts, he allowed himself to spend a lot of time with his girlfriend, Eliza, instead of training. Ryu's personal challenge renews Ken's fighting spirit and convinces him to enter the tournament. After the events of Street Fighter II, Ken married Eliza, a commitment seemingly made only after his decisive victory against Ryu. But it's unknown whether the two fought during the tournament, or if Ken had already won. No details have been announced, although it implicitly suggests that they did fight, and Ken won. Years later, his mind is once again controlled to become Violent Ken. When a new tournament is announced, Ken is unsure whether he will compete, as Eliza is pregnant, and he does not want to leave her. Eliza senses his fighting spirit and assures him that she will be fine, urging him to meet Ryu and convey her greetings. Ken enters the tournament and drives his car to run out of fuel since there are no nearby gas stations, continuing the rest of the way on foot. Throughout the tournament, he faces his rival Rufus, although the results of that match are unknown. Implicitly, he may have defeated Bison in the tournament. After the tournament, he discovers that Guken is still alive, and Ken and Ryu chase after him as he leaves. Ken is upset that Guken didn't say anything to them, but Guken opposes and tells them that they no longer need a teacher. Ken and Ryu head home on foot, and Rufus passes by on his motorcycle, calling them losers. However, his motorcycle quickly runs out of gas, and Ken and Ryu reach the sports car. Ken offers Rufus and his friend Candy a lift, but Rufus refuses. Years later, Eliza gives birth to a child, Mel. Ken, Eliza, and Mel receive an invitation to a party hosted by Karen. The family gets lost on the way to the party and encounters Birdie, whom Ken believes is trespassing on his property, leading to a fight between them. During the party, Ken talks about various sparring matches between him and Ryu. Karen arrives and offers Ken an extra meal as an apology for Birdie's attack, which Ken accepts. Afterwards, he and Eliza wonder why Ryu is not at the party. Ken visits Ryu, who is in the midst of meditation. Ryu tells him that he will join them once his training is complete. Later, Ken arrives with the other fighters invited by Karen to the Kanzuki estate, where they plan to infiltrate Shadaloo's base. Ken and Chun-Li travel to Brazil to search for the first missing chess piece owned by Laura Matsuda. While there, Ken saves Sean from Fang's attack, then gets attacked by Laura, who mistakes him for an enemy. Laura decides to join them, with the condition that Ken adds Jiu-Jitsu to his online karate lessons, to which he agrees. Ken then leaves Chun-Li to assist Karen in the first infiltration. Ken stays with Laura, and as they encounter more Shadaloo soldiers, he reunites with Ryu before the group launches the final attack against the organization. After Bison's final defeat at the hands of Ryu and the destruction of Shadaloo, Ken finds Ryu alone, contemplating. He decides to have another friendly match. Ryu manages to defeat Ken, but he drops his red headband. Ken returns it, considering that he might still need it. Ken and his family move to Southern California from Washington. He enters the Third World Warrior Tournament. At this time, a Brazilian teenager named Sean pesters him to become his student, and Ken reluctantly agrees to start his training. Sean fights in the tournament, and Ken wins the match against him. However, he doesn't complete the tournament as he learns about Ryu's loss against Oro. Ken begins training his son Mel in primitive fighting techniques and tells Sean to go find Ryu and challenge him, giving him some free time with Eliza. Despite boredom, Ken hears about a mysterious organization and goes to investigate, possibly facing Urien. Ryu pursues him and travels all the way from Oakland to New York for the long-awaited rematch. He is ultimately defeated by Ryu. Since then, Ken continues to train Sean and Mel, deal with his family and business, and keep up with his old friend Ryu. While Ryu is more serious and passionate, Ken is the complete opposite, stylish, cocky, and arrogant, in addition to being more violent and aggressive than Ryu. He constantly reminds his opponents of his greatness. However, at his core, he is generally nice, friendly, and a good person, leading him to establish his own family. He never backs down from a fight no matter how tough. He expresses concern for his family and initially considered canceling his participation in the Street Fighter V tournament because he didn't want to leave Eliza. He only entered when she assured him that she would be fine, constantly calling her to warn her about using the stairs with caution.